Disclaimer: this content is only for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. You ever think you really know someone until one day they do something that completely changes everything? That's exactly what happened to me. I thought my marriage was strong, loving, normal. But I had no idea what was waiting just around the corner. What started out as a simple, quiet night at home turned into something I never expected. My husband, the man I've shared years of memories and laughter with, asked me to do something that made me stop cold. At first, I thought he was joking. But no, he was serious. And that moment changed how I saw him, and how I saw us. Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, get ready, because this story is one of the most personal and emotional things I've ever shared. It's a relationship story. But it's not just about love or romance, it's about trust, surprises, and that strange line between comfort and the unknown. And yes, it all happened right there in our bedroom. But not in the way you might think. We were just wrapping up dinner. The house was quiet, our kids were asleep, and it felt like just another regular night. My husband had that look in his eye, you know, the one that says he's thinking hard about something. He sat down across from me and said, "I need to ask you something. And I want you to really think about it before you answer." My heart jumped a little. Not out of fear, but curiosity. He's not the dramatic type. So whatever it was, I knew it mattered to him. And what he asked, I can't tell you just yet. But let's just say it shook me. It wasn't anything bad or disrespectful. In fact, it came from a place of deep love and trust. But it also pushed me far outside my comfort zone. I looked at him for a long time, trying to understand if he was really serious. And he was. Totally. 100%. That one question made me rethink our whole relationship. Not in a bad way, more like seeing it through a new lens. I started to realize how easy it is to fall into patterns, to assume you know everything about your partner. But sometimes, they surprise you. And sometimes, you surprise yourself. So before I reveal what he asked me to do, let me ask you something. Have you ever had a moment in your relationship that completely shifted how you saw each other? Something that tested your bond or revealed a new layer you never knew was there? Drop it in the comments, I want to hear your stories. Or vote in the poll, would you say yes if your partner asked you something totally unexpected? I sat there across from him, staring, waiting for him to crack a smile, some sign that this was just one of his silly jokes. But he didn't. His face was calm, serious. He meant every word. And the way he looked at me, it wasn't threatening or angry. It was soft, almost nervous, like he wasn't sure how I'd react. That alone made my heart race. My husband, the one who always had everything under control, suddenly looked unsure. That's when I knew this was real. To understand how strange this was, you have to know a bit about us. We've been married 7 years. High school sweethearts turned married couple with 2 kids and a shared Netflix account. We've always had a good relationship, real, imperfect, but full of love. He's the quiet, thoughtful type. Never demands much. Always puts me and the kids first. So for him to ask me for something and be nervous about it, that wasn't like him at all. The way he asked was what really stuck with me. He didn't just blurt it out. He kind of built up to it, like he was testing the waters. He said, "I've been thinking about this for a while. I didn't want to bring it up until I knew it was really something I wanted." I asked him if he was unhappy. He said no, nothing like that. But the way he said it, there was something more. I kept waiting for him to say something bad, like he lost his job or he had some kind of health issue. But it wasn't that either. He told me it was about us. About taking our relationship to the next level. Deepening it. Exploring something new together. And that's when the tension in the air shifted. My brain went into overdrive. What could it be? A move? A big change? Something we'd never talked about before. I won't lie, I got scared. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I wasn't sure if I trusted myself to be okay with what he might say next. He reached out and took my hand and just held it. No pressure. Just calm, steady contact. And then, he whispered it. But I'm not going to tell you yet. Because once you hear what it is, you're going to question what you would have done. And maybe, just maybe, you'll understand why I froze in that moment. Tell me in the comments, what's something your partner has asked you that totally caught you off guard? Would you have said yes? Or walked away? I remember the moment so clearly, like time slowed down. He leaned in just a little and finally said it. I can't tell you the exact words yet, not yet, but the second he said it, my heart skipped. It wasn't dangerous. It wasn't wrong. But it was different. It wasn't something we'd ever talked about. It wasn't something I even thought he cared about. And yet, he said it with such honesty, like it had been sitting on his chest for months, maybe longer. I pulled my hand back just slightly, not because I was upset, but because I didn't know how to react. My mind went blank for a second, then filled with a million questions. Why now? Why this? What did it mean for us if I said yes? Or worse, what if I said no? He noticed the shift in me immediately. He backed off, gave me space, even apologized for putting me on the spot. But the thing is, I wasn't upset at him. I was upset at myself for not knowing how to respond. For feeling torn between being the supportive wife and being me. This thing he wanted, it wasn't anything scandalous. But it required me to open up in a way I never had before. Not physically. Emotionally. Mentally. It was about trust, vulnerability, and a part of him I had never seen. 4 days after, we danced around it. We'd go through our routine like everything was fine, kids, work, dinner, Netflix, but under all of that was it. The conversation. The question. The thing neither of us knew how to bring up again without stirring the same emotions. I kept wondering if this was something that had been missing for him. If I had been missing it all along. That maybe, deep down, he needed this not just as a request, but as a way to connect with me on a deeper level. One night, I talked to my best friend about it. I didn't go into full detail, but I told her enough. Her reaction surprised me. She didn't judge. In fact, she said, honestly, I wish my husband would open up like that. That hit me. It made me realize I might be more closed off than I thought. That maybe I'd been so focused on being a good mom, a good wife, a responsible adult, that I'd forgotten how to just be open. Curious. Playful. Brave. Still, something about his request made me hesitate. It stirred something old in me. Fear of change. Fear of letting go. Fear of what would happen if I went all in and didn't like what I found on the other side. Now I'm asking you, if your partner came to you with something deeply personal, something a little outside the usual, would you lean in? Or would you hold back? Drop a comment with what you think is going to happen next, or what you would have done in my place. Because honestly, I still don't know if I made the right decision. Days turned into a week, and the silence around his request grew louder than any argument we'd ever had. Not angry silence, just that kind of weight that sits in the room, between your words, behind your glances. We both felt it. And yet, neither of us wanted to be the first to bring it up again. I could see him trying to act normal, to not push me, but every once in a while, I'd catch him watching me with that same unsure expression, like he was wondering if I was still thinking about it. I was. Every single day. I started questioning myself more than ever. Was I being unfair? Too cautious? Or was I protecting something fragile between us? The truth is, I wasn't scared of what he asked me. I was scared of what it meant if I said yes. Would it change us? Would we lose that balance we've worked so hard to keep? Or would we become closer than ever before? That possibility scared me even more, because what if I wasn't ready for that kind of closeness? One night, he came into our bedroom while I was folding laundry. No distractions. No kids. No noise. He just stood in the doorway and said, "I don't want this to come between us. If it makes you uncomfortable, we'll forget it." Really? But I could tell he didn't want to forget it. He just didn't want to lose me over it. And that's when something shifted in me. I realized it wasn't about the thing he asked for. It was about us, how we handle fear, how we handle vulnerability, how we stay honest when it's hard. I told him I needed one more day. Just one. He nodded, no pressure. But I could feel it, the air in the room got heavier, like we were standing on the edge of something big. Bigger than just a decision. Like this moment was going to define a part of our relationship we hadn't stepped into before. That night I barely slept. I replayed our years together, every high, every low. The times we held each other through loss. The times we laughed so hard we cried. And this felt like one of those defining forks in the road. I kept asking myself, what kind of love is afraid to stretch? What kind of trust stays safe forever? So I stood there the next morning, heart pounding, ready to answer. But then, right before I could speak, he said something that changed everything. But I'll tell you that part, in the next one. Tell me in the comments, what do you think he said? I opened my mouth to answer him, finally ready to face it all, the fear, the questions, the unknown, but he beat me to it. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Before you say anything, there's something else I need to tell you." And just like that, my breath caught again. Another twist. Another curve in a road I thought I was finally learning to walk. He sat down on the edge of the bed, his hands clasped tightly. This wasn't nerves anymore. This was deeper. He wasn't just asking something from me, he was about to give me something. A truth. One he'd clearly been carrying for a while. "This thing I asked you for," he said slowly, "it's not just something I want. It's something I feel like I need, because it connects to something I haven't told you before." My heart thudded louder with each word. All I could think was, what else could there be? I thought I knew this man inside out. His childhood stories, his worst habits, every little quirk. But the look on his face told me there was a whole side of him I hadn't seen. Not once in 7 years. Then he told me. And no, I'm still not saying it yet, but I'll say this much, it wasn't just about us. It was about his past. Something he never shared. Something that shaped the way he loves, the way he connects. It made me look at his request in a whole new light. Suddenly, it wasn't about stepping out of my comfort zone. It was about him letting me into his. And here's where it really got complicated, because just as I was beginning to process this new piece of him, just as I was starting to feel like I could maybe, possibly say yes, we got interrupted. Not by the kids. Not by a phone call. By a message. A name I hadn't seen in years. It popped up on his phone, screen lit up like it was meant for me to see. I didn't even touch it, just stared. It was from her. Someone from his past. Someone I thought was long gone, and definitely not someone who should be texting him now. The timing couldn't have been worse. Everything inside me tightened. All those feelings of closeness, of trust, of being on the edge of something deeper, just like that, they snapped. Not because I didn't trust him, but because now, suddenly, I didn't know what was real anymore. He saw me looking and froze. "It's not what you think," he said. Classic line, right? But this time, I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. Because if I didn't, then what was all this for? So I'm asking you. What would you do if someone from your partner's past suddenly showed up at the exact moment you were opening yourself to something new? Coincidence? Or something more? Drop your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned. You won't believe what happened next. I stared at his phone, the name glowing like it was daring me to ask. My mind raced. Everything he'd just said, all the emotional weight of that moment, suddenly felt like it was slipping through my fingers. I looked at him, waiting for an explanation, anything that could make this make sense. He didn't look guilty. He looked afraid. Not of being caught, but of being misunderstood. "It's her," he said quietly. "But not the way you think. Turns out, she wasn't just some old flame. She was part of the story he had started to tell me, this deeper part of himself he'd never shared. Years ago, before we ever met, he'd been in a situation that changed him. Something emotional, messy, and unresolved. He said she'd reached out not to start something again, but because she'd seen our wedding anniversary post online. She wanted to apologize. Not for getting back into his life, but for the way she left his before. She was part of the reason he had built walls, why he'd taken so long to open up, why the thing he asked of me had meant so much. I didn't know what to say at first. My emotions were all over the place, relief, anger, confusion. But mostly, I felt something else, clarity. He wasn't trying to hide anything. In fact, he was trying harder than ever to not hide. To let me in. To finally be fully seen. So I told him yes. I said yes to his request. Yes to the emotional risk. Yes to deepening what we already had. And the second I did, I saw something in his eyes shift, like he could finally breathe. We sat there, just holding each other, no big words, no grand moment. Just quiet understanding. But just when I thought everything had settled, when I thought the story had come full circle, there was one more twist. Later that night, I went to plug in his phone, and I noticed something strange. A draft email. Not sent. Just sitting there. It was addressed to me. The subject line read, "In case you say no." I haven't opened it yet. Now I'm asking you, would you read it? Or let it stay closed forever? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because part of me wants to know what he thought might happen, but part of me isn't sure I'm ready for that answer. That email sat in my mind all night. In case you say no. Those 5 words had more weight than I expected. They weren't just a backup plan, they were a window into everything he felt leading up to that moment. The fear of rejection. The what ifs. The thought that maybe, just maybe, our love wasn't as strong as he hoped. I knew I had to read it. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I wanted to understand just how deep this ran. The next morning, while he was getting the kids ready for breakfast, I opened the draft. It wasn't long. Just a few paragraphs. But each word was honest. Raw. He wrote about how hard it had been to bring this side of himself to the surface. How he'd spent years tucking parts of his identity away, scared that if he showed them to me, I might not see him the same. He talked about our marriage, the good, the hard, the beautiful, and how this moment wasn't about changing what we had, but about fully stepping into it. He said if I said no, he would understand, but he'd need time. Not to walk away, but to find peace with keeping that piece of himself locked away again. And that broke me. Because love like that, quiet, patient, honest, that's rare. When I finished reading, I closed the laptop and walked straight to him. I didn't say anything. I just hugged him, tightly, from behind. He turned, confused for a second, until he realized. I nodded. I read it, I said. He didn't look upset. He just pulled me in and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." And that was it. No dramatic ending. No fireworks. Just 2 people, still choosing each other even after the unexpected, the awkward, the hard. Life hasn't been perfect since. But we're different now. Stronger. Closer. More real with each other. The thing he asked for? We tried it. Slowly. Together. And the results weren't just about the act itself, it was about what it opened up between us. Communication. Trust. A deeper kind of romance that doesn't come from flowers or date nights, but from seeing someone fully and still staying. So now I want to know, how did this story make you feel? Would you have read the email? Would you have said yes? Tell me in the comments. And if you'd like a part 2, or want to know how things went after, let me know. You might just get a sequel.